Subscribe for untold royal moments that history never explains. The morning started like any other at Buckingham Palace. Guards stood at their posts. Staff moved quietly through the hallways, and the royal family prepared for another day of duties. But this particular Wednesday would become a day that everyone in the palace would remember forever. Officer James Mitchell had served the royal family for 15 years. He was known for following every rule, never questioning orders, and maintaining absolute discretion. His record was spotless. He had earned the trust of senior officials and even received commendations from the king himself. Nobody expected that he would be the one to uncover something that would shake the very foundation of the palace. It began with a routine security sweep. Every few months, the palace security team conducted thorough inspections of all rooms, including private quarters. This was standard procedure, designed to ensure safety and identify any potential security risks. The inspections were always announced weeks in advance, giving residents time to prepare. However, this time was different. An anonymous letter had arrived at the security office 3 days earlier. The letter claimed that something dangerous was hidden in Queen Camilla's private wardrobe. The letter provided specific details about the wardrobe's location and even described the room layout with surprising accuracy. At first, security officials dismissed it as a prank. The palace received dozens of conspiracy theories and false claims every week. But this letter was different. It contained information that only someone with inside access could know. The head of security, Commander Robert Harrison, made the difficult decision to investigate. He couldn't ignore a potential security threat, even if it involved the Queen Consort. He assigned Officer Mitchell to the task because of his reputation and discretion. The orders were clear but uncomfortable. Mitchell was to inspect Queen Camilla's wardrobe when she was away at a charity event. He would have exactly 1 hour. That morning, Officer Mitchell felt a knot in his stomach. He had never been asked to do something like this before. Searching a royal's private quarters felt wrong, even with official orders. He had seen Queen Camilla many times during his service. She was always polite, always gracious. The idea that she might be hiding something dangerous seemed impossible. At exactly 10 o'clock, Queen Camilla left for her charity event in London. She was scheduled to visit a children's hospital and wouldn't return until afternoon. Officer Mitchell waited 15 minutes to ensure she was truly gone. Then, accompanied by Commander Harrison and one other witness, he walked toward the Queen's private chambers. The hallway seemed longer than usual. Each step felt heavy. Mitchell had searched countless rooms before, but this was different. This was personal. This involved someone at the very top of the royal hierarchy. If he found nothing, it might damage trust. If he found something, consequences could be devastating. They reached the door to Queen Camilla's private dressing room. Commander Harrison knocked twice. Formality, even though they knew the room was empty. Silence. He produced a master key and slowly turned it in the lock. The door opened with a soft click. The room was exactly what one would expect from royalty. Elegant, tasteful, and immaculately organized. Soft morning light filtered through silk curtains. The air smelled faintly of expensive perfume. Everything was in perfect order. For a moment, Mitchell hoped they would find nothing, and this whole situation would end quietly. The wardrobe stood against the far wall. It was a magnificent piece of furniture, hand-carved from dark wood, probably over 100 years old. It had ornate handles and detailed engravings along the edges. Mitchell approached it slowly. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for the handle. Commander Harrison stood behind him, arms crossed, face unreadable. The third witness, a senior staff member named Margaret, watched nervously from the doorway. Nobody spoke. The only sound was the ticking of an antique clock on the mantel. Mitchell pulled the wardrobe door open. Inside hung rows of beautiful clothes, dresses, coats, formal gowns. Everything was arranged by color and season. He began carefully moving items aside, checking behind them, looking for anything unusual. At first there was nothing. Then his hand touched something unexpected. Behind a row of winter coats, hidden in the back corner, there was a small wooden box. It was pushed far back, deliberately concealed. Mitchell's heart began racing. He carefully pulled the box forward, The box was old, made of dark wood similar to the wardrobe itself. It had a small brass lock, but the lock was already open. Mitchell glanced back at Commander Harrison, who nodded for him to continue. With careful fingers, Mitchell lifted the lid. Inside were papers. Dozens of documents, all neatly stacked and organized. Mitchell picked up the first few pages and began reading. His eyes widened. These weren't just any documents. These were personal letters, some dating back decades. There were also photographs, old and faded, showing people he didn't recognize. But it was what lay beneath the letters that made Mitchell's breath catch in his throat. There were medical records, official documents with royal seals, and what appeared to be legal papers. As he read through them, the color drained from his face. Commander Harrison stepped forward. His voice was barely a whisper. "What is it?" Mitchell couldn't speak at first. He handed the documents to Harrison, whose expression changed from curiosity to shock to something close to fear. Margaret moved closer, trying to see, but Harrison quickly closed the box. The room fell into complete silence. The three of them stood frozen, each processing what they had just discovered. This wasn't a security threat. This was something far more complicated. These documents told a story that nobody in the palace knew. A story that Queen Camilla had kept hidden for years. Mitchell felt sick. He wished he had never opened that wardrobe. Some secrets, he realized, were kept secret for good reasons. But now, the secret was out, at least among the three of them. The question was, what would happen next? Commander Harrison made a decision. He closed the wardrobe carefully, making sure everything looked exactly as they had found it. He took the box of documents and tucked it under his arm. His voice was firm but shaking slightly. "Nobody speaks of this until I've reported to the king. Nobody, is that understood?" Mitchell and Margaret both nodded. They left the room in silence, locking the door behind them. As they walked back through the palace hallways, everything looked the same. But Mitchell knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Word spread through the palace staff within hours. Not about what was found, but that something had been found. In a place where gossip traveled faster than official announcements, people whispered in corners. Senior staff members exchanged worried glances. Junior staff sensed the tension but didn't know its source. By lunchtime, the king had been informed. He immediately canceled his afternoon meetings and retreated to his private study. Nobody saw him for the rest of the day. His private secretary emerged once, looking pale and shaken, but refused to answer any questions. Queen Camilla returned from her charity event at 3 o'clock. She was smiling, energized from her visit with the children. She noticed immediately that something was wrong. The staff members who greeted her couldn't meet her eyes. The usual warmth was replaced by awkward formality. She went to her chambers to change. When she entered her dressing room, everything looked normal. The wardrobe was closed, nothing seemed disturbed, but she had a terrible feeling, a mother's intuition that something had happened in her absence. That evening, she was summoned to meet the king. The walk to his study felt like a journey to judgment. She knew, somehow she knew, that they had found it. All these years of careful concealment, protecting a truth that could hurt people she loved, and now it was all coming apart. Queen Camilla knocked on the heavy oak door of the king's study. Her heart pounded in her chest. A muffled voice from inside told her to enter. She pushed the door open and stepped into the room. The king sat behind his desk, the wooden box placed in front of him. The documents were spread across the surface, some in neat piles, others scattered as if he had been reading them frantically. His face looked tired, aged beyond his years. When he looked up at her, she saw emotion she had never seen before in his eyes. Confusion, hurt, and something else. Perhaps betrayal. He didn't speak immediately. The silence stretched between them like an ocean. Finally, Camilla closed the door behind her and walked slowly toward the desk. She didn't sit down. She stood there, hands clasped in front of her, waiting. The king's voice was quiet when he finally spoke. "How long have you had these?" Camilla took a deep breath. "Since before we married. Some of them for much longer." He picked up one of the photographs, an old black and white image showing a young woman holding a baby. The woman looked remarkably like Camilla, but younger, from a different era. "Who is this?" Tears welled in Camilla's eyes. She had kept this secret for so long, carrying the weight of it alone. Now, facing the moment she had always feared, she felt strangely relieved. That's my mother. And the baby is my sister. The king's eyes widened. Everyone knew Camilla had a brother, but nobody had ever mentioned a sister. You have a sister? Why doesn't anyone know about this? Camilla finally sat down, her legs suddenly weak. Because my parents gave her up for adoption when she was just 3 months old? It was 1950. My mother was young, unmarried when she became pregnant. It was a scandal that could have destroyed our family's reputation. My grandparents arranged for the baby to be adopted by a family in Scotland. They made my mother swear never to speak of it. The king leaned back in his chair, processing this information. But your mother eventually married your father. They had you and your brother. Why didn't they try to find her? Why keep this hidden? Camilla wiped her eyes. My mother never stopped thinking about her. When I was 16, she told me the truth. She showed me the one photograph she had kept, hidden away. She made me promise to find her someday, to tell her that she was loved, that giving her away was the hardest thing my mother ever did. The king gestured to the document spread across his desk. And did you? Find her? Camilla nodded slowly. It took years. I hired private investigators, but I couldn't let anyone in the family know. The shame was too great for my mother. By the time I found her, my mother had passed away. My sister, her name is Catherine, was living in Edinburgh. She was married, had children of her own. She never knew she was adopted. The king's expression softened slightly. What did you do? I watched her from a distance at first, Camilla said quietly. I saw her at the market, at her children's school events. She looked so much like my mother. She had the same smile, the same way of laughing. It broke my heart. I wanted to tell her everything, but I was terrified. What if she rejected me? What if the truth destroyed the life she had built? The king picked up another document. This one looked official, with legal stamps and signatures. But you did eventually contact her. Camilla's voice became stronger. Yes. About 8 years ago, I sent her a letter. I explained who I was, who she really was. I included copies of birth records, adoption papers, everything that proved our connection. I told her that I didn't expect anything from her, but I wanted her to know the truth. What happened? She called me 3 days later, Camilla said, a small smile appearing through her tears. She was angry at first, angry that the truth had been kept from her for so long. But then we talked for hours. She wanted to know everything about our mother, about the family she never knew. We arranged to meet in secret. The king stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the palace gardens. Why in secret? Why not tell me? Why not tell anyone? Camilla stood as well, moving closer to him. Because I was terrified of what people would think. The press would have destroyed her. They would have dug into her life, questioned her children, made her into a spectacle, and the royal family already had so many concerns about my past. I didn't want to add another complication. The king turned to face her. These medical records. What are these? Camilla's face fell. This was the part she dreaded most. Catherine was diagnosed with a rare genetic condition 5 years ago. It's hereditary. The doctors needed complete family medical history to treat her properly. I had to provide information, had to help her understand her genetic background. Those records document everything. Is she all right? She's managing it. The treatment is ongoing. I've been helping financially, secretly. I couldn't let her struggle when I have resources that could help. She's my sister. The king walked back to his desk and sat down heavily. He looked at all the documents again, seeing them in a new light. These weren't secrets kept out of malice or deception. These were the careful records of a woman trying to protect someone she loved while navigating an impossible situation. The letters, he said, picking up a stack of handwritten pages. You've been writing to each other? It's almost every week for the past 8 years, Camilla confirmed. She tells me about her children, her grandchildren. I tell her about my life as much as I can. She knows who I am, who I married, but she's never asked for anything. She just wanted to know her sister. The king read a few lines from one of the letters. The words were warm, familial, filled with the kind of affection that can't be faked. He saw mentions of birthdays, holidays, ordinary family moments. These were the letters of two women who had found each other late in life and were making up for lost time. "Why keep all of this in your wardrobe?" he asked. "Surely there are safer places." Camilla smiled sadly. "Because I wanted them close to me. Those letters, those photographs, they're all I have of a relationship I can't share with the world. Sometimes, late at night, I would read them and feel connected to a part of my life that nobody else knows about. It was foolish, I know, but it felt right." The king was quiet for a long time. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the room. Finally, he spoke. "What do you want to do now?" "The secret is out, at least among some of the palace staff. Commander Harrison knows. Officer Mitchell knows. It will spread." Camilla felt panic rising in her chest. "Please, you can't let this become public. Catherine's life would be destroyed. Her children don't even know the full story. She wanted to tell them in her own time and her own way. If the press gets hold of this, they'll chase her, harass her family. I couldn't bear that." The king stood and walked around the desk. For the first time since she entered the room, he took her hand. "I'm not angry with you for having secrets. I'm hurt that you felt you couldn't trust me with this. We're supposed to face things together." Tears flowed freely down Camilla's face now. "I was afraid. Afraid you'd think less of me. Afraid it would cause problems for the family. This institution has enough challenges without adding my complicated family history to the mix." He pulled her into an embrace. "Your family is my family now. This woman, Catherine, she's part of our family too, whether anyone else knows it or not." Camilla sobbed against his shoulder, releasing years of fear and tension. "What do we do?" The king pulled back and looked at her seriously. "First, we control the narrative. I'll speak with Commander Harrison personally. The staff who know will sign confidentiality agreements. This stays within these walls. And after that, then you decide. If you want to keep this private forever, we'll make sure it stays private. But if you ever want to acknowledge her, to bring her into your life properly, I'll support that decision. It's your choice." Camilla felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. She had expected judgment, anger, even demands for explanation. Instead, she found understanding. "Thank you," she whispered. The king gathered all the documents and placed them carefully back in the wooden box. He handed it to Camilla. "Keep these somewhere safer. Perhaps a locked safe in the vault? But keep them. This is your history, your family. Nobody should take that from you." As Camilla left the study that night, she felt different. The secret that had burdened her for so long was no longer hers alone to carry. Someone else knew. Someone who mattered, and the world hadn't ended. In fact, something had begun. The possibility of truth, of reconciliation, of finally being whole. The next morning, Officer James Mitchell was summoned to Commander Harrison's office. He had barely slept the night before, his mind racing with thoughts about what he had discovered. The walk to the office felt like walking to his own trial. He had followed orders, done his job, but he felt like he had violated something sacred. Commander Harrison was not alone. The king's private secretary, Sir Edmund Grey, sat in one of the leather chairs. His presence meant this was serious. Mitchell stood at attention. Waiting, Commander Harrison spoke first. "Officer Mitchell, what you witnessed yesterday is a matter of the highest confidentiality. You are aware of this, correct?" Mitchell nodded stiffly. "Yes, sir." Edmund leaned forward. "The king has asked me to personally ensure that everyone involved understands the gravity of this situation. What you discovered affects the Queen Consort's private life in ways that have nothing to do with security or public interest. It is a family matter." Mitchell relaxed slightly. "So they weren't going to punish him." "I understand, sir. I followed protocol. The anonymous letter suggested a security threat." "And you found none," Sir Edmund said firmly. "The letter was likely sent by someone with malicious intent, hoping to embarrass the Queen Consort or create scandal. You investigated, found personal documents of no security concern, and reported to your superior. That is where this matter ends." Commander Harrison slid a document across the desk. You need to sign a confidentiality agreement. You are never to speak of what you saw, not to family, not to friends, not even to other staff members. Breaking this agreement would constitute a serious breach of your duties and could result in legal action. Mitchell picked up the pen without hesitation. He had never wanted to be part of this situation. If signing a paper meant it would all go away, he would gladly do it. He signed quickly and slid the document back. Sir Edmund stood, preparing to leave. The king wants you to know that he holds no ill will toward you. You were doing your job. However, he expects your absolute discretion going forward. After they left, Mitchell sat alone for a moment. He thought about Queen Camilla, about the hidden box, about the letters he had glimpsed. Everyone had secrets, he realized. Even royalty. Maybe especially royalty. The weight of living in the public eye while trying to maintain some piece of private humanity must be crushing. He decided then that he would forget what he had seen. Not because a document told him to, but because it was the right thing to do. Some truths were not meant to be shared. Meanwhile, at her estate outside London, Catherine Harper was gardening. She was 68 years old, a retired teacher with 3 grown children and 5 grandchildren. Her life was simple, comfortable, and relatively quiet. She had lived in the same house for 40 years, knew all her neighbors, and enjoyed a routine. Her phone rang. She pulled off her gardening gloves and answered. It was Camilla. Gah. Camilla's voice was strained. Something's happened. We need to talk. Catherine's heart sank. In 8 years of secret sisterhood, she had learned to read Camilla's tones. This was serious. What is it? Camilla explained everything. The anonymous letter, the search, the discovery. Catherine listened in silence, her hands beginning to shake. When Camilla finished, there was a long pause. So people know, Catherine said finally. People in the palace know about me, very small number, and they've all signed agreements. It won't become public. Catherine sat down on her garden bench. Camilla, we always knew this could happen. You can't keep secrets forever, not in your position. I'm so sorry. I promised to protect you, to keep you out of the spotlight. I've failed. Catherine's voice became firm. You haven't failed anyone. You've been a wonderful sister. You found me when you didn't have to. You've been part of my life in ways I never imagined possible. If the secret comes out, we'll deal with it together. Camilla felt tears welling up again. You're not angry? Angry? Camilla, I'm an old woman. I've lived a good life. If people find out that the queen consort is my sister, well, that's quite a story, isn't it? My book club will be absolutely thrilled. Despite everything, Camilla laughed. Catherine had always had a way of putting things in perspective. She never acted impressed by Camilla's position, never asked for special treatment. She just wanted to know her sister. There's something else, Camilla said carefully. The king thinks I should consider acknowledging you publicly. Not now, but someday. On my own terms, when the time is right. Catherine was quiet for a moment. What do you think? I think I'm tired of hiding. I think you deserve to be recognized as part of my family, but I'm terrified of what it might do to your life. Let me talk to my children first, Catherine said. They deserve to know the truth before anyone else. They've always known I was adopted, but they don't know who my birth family was. Give me a few weeks to have those conversations. Then we can decide together. Over the next month, Catherine sat down with each of her 3 children. The conversations were emotional, sometimes difficult, but ultimately brought them closer together. Her eldest daughter cried, overwhelmed by the revelation. Her son was skeptical at first, wondering if it was some kind of scam. Her youngest daughter was fascinated, immediately wanting to meet Camilla. They all had questions. Why had the secret been kept so long? What did this mean for their family? Would their lives change? Catherine answered everything honestly. She showed them the letters, the photographs, the proof of their connection. Slowly, they came to accept this new reality. Their mother had a sister. That sister happened to be Queen Consort. It was extraordinary, but it was also simply a fact of their family history. Meanwhile, the palace, preparations were being made. The king had decided that if and when the story came out, it should be on their terms. His communications team began drafting statements, considering possible scenarios. They researched public reaction to similar revelations in other royal families. They prepared for every possibility. But something unexpected happened. The story didn't leak. The staff members who knew kept their silence. Officer Mitchell went about his duties without speaking a word. Even Margaret, who worked in an environment where gossip was currency, held her tongue. Perhaps it was respect. Perhaps it was fear of legal consequences. Or perhaps in their own way, they understood that this was different. This wasn't scandal or impropriety. This was a human story about family, loss, and reunion. It deserved protection. 2 months after the discovery, Catherine's children met Camilla for the first time. The meeting was arranged carefully, held at a private country house far from prying eyes. Security was present, but discreet. When Catherine's eldest daughter first saw Camilla, she gasped. The family resemblance was unmistakable. They had the same eyes, the same smile, the same way of tilting their heads when they listened. It was like looking at her mother's reflection. The afternoon was tentative at first. Everyone was nervous, unsure of how to act. But gradually, as tea was served and conversation flowed, something beautiful happened. They became simply a family gathered together. Stories were shared, photographs passed around. Laughter filled the room. Camilla learned about her nephews and nieces, asked about their lives, their interests. She wasn't the queen consort in that room. She was Aunt Camilla, a title she had never expected to hold. Catherine's youngest daughter, Emma, was particularly taken with her. At one point, she asked quietly, "Does it bother you that Gran gave Mum away? That she kept it secret all those years?" Camilla considered the question carefully. Your grandmother lived in a different time. The shame of having a child outside marriage could destroy a woman's entire future. She did what she thought she had to do to protect herself and her baby. I think she hoped that adoption would give your mother a better life. Did it? Emma asked. Catherine reached over and took her daughter's hand. I had wonderful adoptive parents. They loved me, raised me well, but there was always a piece missing. A question about where I came from. Finding Camilla answered that question. Both things can be true. I had a good life, and I still missed something I didn't know I had lost. The king arrived later that afternoon. His presence could have made things awkward, but instead he fit naturally into the gathering. He asked Catherine about her teaching career, complimented Emma on her recent promotion at work. He was not there as a monarch, but as Camilla's husband, supporting her as family expanded to include these new relatives. As the sun set and the gathering came to an end, Catherine pulled Camilla aside. Thank you for this. For all of it. For finding me, for keeping me safe, for bringing our families together. Camilla hugged her sister tightly. I should have done it sooner. I wasted so many years being afraid. We have time now, Catherine said. However much we have left, we'll make the most of it. That evening, driving back to the palace, Camilla felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. The secret that had weighed on her. For so long, was still technically a secret to the world, but it no longer felt like a burden. The people who mattered knew. Her family was complete. 6 months had passed since that fateful morning when Officer Mitchell opened the wardrobe. Life at the palace had returned to its usual rhythm, but something fundamental had changed beneath the surface. Camilla walked the halls differently now, lighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She and Catherine spoke almost daily now, no longer restricting themselves to weekly letters. Sometimes the calls were brief, just a check-in to say hello. Other times they talked for hours, making up for decades of lost conversations. Catherine's children had become comfortable with their royal connection, though they kept it private as requested. But the question remained. Should they go public? The king brought it up one evening as they prepared for bed. You seem happier these past months. Camilla smiled. Having Catherine in my life properly, not hiding anymore, at least not from the people who matter. It's changed everything. Do you ever think about telling the world? She was quiet for a moment, brushing her hair at the vanity. Every day. But I'm still afraid. The press can be so cruel. They'll dig into Catherine's past, question her children, Probably suggests she's after money or status. She doesn't seem like the type to want those things. She's not. That's what makes this harder. She'd hate the attention. But I also feel like I'm disrespecting her by keeping her hidden, as if I'm ashamed of her. The king sat on the edge of the bed. What if we controlled it differently? Not a big announcement, but a gradual introduction. Start by having her at small private events. Let people see her naturally becoming part of your life. Then, when someone eventually asks, we simply tell the truth. Camilla turned to look at him. That could work. It would give her time to adjust, give the press time to lose interest before they even realize there's a story. Talk to Catherine. See what she thinks? The conversation with Catherine happened the next day. They met at the country house, where the families had first gathered. This time, it was just the two sisters, sitting in the garden with tea. Camilla presented the idea carefully. Catherine listened, her face thoughtful. When Camilla finished, Catherine poured more tea before responding. I've been thinking about this too, Catherine admitted. At first, I wanted to stay hidden forever. I was terrified of attention. But Emma said something to me last week that changed my perspective. What did she say? She said that hiding me sends a message that there's something shameful about our story. That adoption is something to be embarrassed about. That family secrets should stay buried. She said that as a teacher, I spent my whole career telling children to be proud of who they are, but I wasn't following my own advice. Camilla reached across and took her sister's hand. There's wisdom in that. She's right. What happened to our mother? To me, it wasn't shameful. It was sad, it was difficult, but it was also ultimately about love. Our mother loved me enough to want better for me. My adoptive parents loved me enough to raise me as their own. You loved me enough to find me. That's a beautiful story, not a shameful one. So you'd be willing to go public? Catherine nodded slowly. On one condition, we tell the story our way. Not sensationalized, not dramatic, just the simple truth. Two sisters separated by circumstance, reunited by determination, and now choosing to be family openly. They decided to start small. Catherine was invited to a charity event that Camilla was hosting for literacy programs. It was a cause Catherine cared deeply about, having spent 40 years teaching children to read. She came as a guest, not making any special introduction, just attending like any other supporter. A few photographs were taken. Catherine appeared in the background of some shots with Camilla. Nobody paid much attention. Just another supporter at a charity event. The next month, Catherine attended a garden party at one of the royal estates. This time, she was photographed standing closer to Camilla, engaged in conversation. A few journalists noted her presence, described her as a friend of the queen consort. But nothing more. Gradually, over several months, Catherine became a familiar face at certain events. She was always there in a support capacity, never seeking attention, always appropriate. The press began to recognize her but didn't find her particularly interesting. Just another member of Camilla's circle. Then came the moment they had planned. A respected journalist was invited to do a long-form interview with Camilla about her charitable work. Near the end of the interview, journalist asked about the people who supported her work. Camilla spoke warmly about various supporters, then mentioned Catherine. She's been particularly important to me. Catherine brings a teacher's perspective to our literacy initiatives. She understands what children need. The journalist doing background research later noticed Catherine's frequent presence at events. In a follow-up question submitted in writing, she asked about the nature of their relationship. Camilla's response was simple and direct. Catherine is my sister. We were separated due to family circumstances decades ago and reconnected several years back. She prefers to maintain her privacy, but she's been a wonderful support to my work and to me personally. The story broke on a quiet Tuesday morning. Queen consort reveals previously unknown sister, read the headlines. But the tone was different than Camilla had feared, because they had controlled the narrative. Because Catherine had been visible for months without drama. And because the statement was so straightforward, the press didn't know how to sensationalize it. The articles recounted the basic facts. Adoption in 1950. Reunion several years ago. A private relationship now becoming public. Some outlets tried to create controversy, suggesting secrecy and scandal, but the evidence worked against them. Catherine had been at public events for months. Clearly, this wasn't being hidden. The public response was overwhelmingly positive. People loved the human element of the story. Social media filled with comments about adoption, family reunification, and the courage it took to acknowledge this publicly. Adoption advocacy groups praised Camilla for bringing attention to adoption stories. Catherine's life did change. Reporters showed up at her house, though she politely declined interviews. Her children were approached, but had been prepared. They gave brief, positive statements about being proud of their family history, and then fused further comment. The initial frenzy lasted about 2 weeks. Then, as predicted, interest waned. Catherine returned to her normal life, with the addition of occasionally attending public events with her sister. She never sought publicity, never used the connection for personal gain, and the press eventually lost interest in someone who wouldn't provide them with drama. At the palace, Officer Mitchell watched the news coverage with a strange sense of satisfaction. He had been the catalyst for this outcome, however unintentionally. His discovery, which he had feared would cause harm, had ultimately led to healing. The secret that had burdened Queen Camilla for years was finally free. One afternoon, several months after the public revelation, Mitchell was doing his rounds when he encountered Queen Camilla in one of the palace corridors. She stopped when she saw him. "Officer Mitchell," she said warmly, "I've been meaning to speak with you." He stood at attention, uncertain. "Your Majesty, I wanted to thank you. What you discovered, what you reported, it forced me to face something I had been avoiding. It led to one of the best things that's happened to me. My sister and I can finally be family openly." Mitchell didn't know what to say. He had expected anger, resentment, or at best indifference. "Not gratitude," Camilla continued. "I know you were just doing your job, but sometimes doing the right thing leads to unexpected blessings. Thank you for your discretion and your professionalism." She walked away, leaving Mitchell standing in the corridor, moved in a way he couldn't quite explain. He had spent 15 years serving the royal family, but this moment felt different. He had been part of something real, something human. That summer, Catherine's youngest daughter, Emma, got married. It was a small wedding in Edinburgh, family and close friends only. Camilla attended, along with the king. Security was present, but unobtrusive. The press knew about the wedding, but respected the privacy requested. During the reception, Camilla gave a toast. She spoke about family, about love, about the unexpected ways life brings people together. She talked about her mother, the grandmother Emma had never met, and how proud she would have been of this moment. Catherine cried, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming sense of completeness. Her birth family and her chosen family were together, celebrating, no longer divided by secrets or shame. Late in the evening, two sisters stood together outside the venue, looking at the stars. Catherine spoke quietly. "Do you ever wonder how different things would have been if Mom had been able to keep me? If the times had been different?" Camilla considered this. "Sometimes, but then I think about the life you had, the children you raised, the students you taught. You've touched hundreds of lives. Maybe things happened exactly as they were meant to." "Do you really believe that?" "I believe that we can't change the past, but we can choose what we do with the present. Right now, I have a sister I love, nieces and nephews I'm getting to know, and a family that's bigger and richer than I ever imagined. That's enough." Catherine smiled. "More than enough." Back at the palace, in a locked safe, the wooden box remained. Inside were the letters, the photographs, the documents that had started everything. But they were no longer secrets. They were simply history, a record of a journey from separation to reunion. The palace staff, who had known about the discovery before the public announcement, felt a sense of pride. They had protected something precious, allowing it to unfold in its own time. Commander Harrison had framed the confidentiality agreements in his office. It's a reminder that sometimes the most important duty is knowing when to stay silent. As autumn arrived and the leaves began to turn, Camilla stood in her dressing room. The same room where everything had been discovered. The wardrobe was still there, still holding clothes and personal items, but it no longer held the weight of secrets. She opened it one day and looked at the space where the box had been hidden. A small part of her missed the secrecy, the private connection to Catherine that nobody else knew about. But a larger part of her was grateful for the freedom that truth had brought. The king entered the room and saw her standing there. Thinking about everything? She nodded. Remembering, grateful, any regrets? Camilla closed the wardrobe door. None? Well, maybe one. I wish I hadn't been so afraid for so long. I could have had years more with Catherine if I'd been braver. But you found the courage eventually. That's what matters. As they left the room together, Camilla thought about Officer Mitchell. About the anonymous letter that had started everything. About the chain of events that had led to this moment. Life was strange sometimes. How things that seemed like disasters turned into blessings. The palace continued its rhythms. Guards stood at their posts. Staff moved through hallways. Royal duties were carried out with precision and grace. But within those ancient walls, something had shifted. A family had grown. A truth had been told. And two sisters, separated by decades and circumstances, were finally, fully, and publicly united. The silence that had fallen over the palace that first day, the shocked quiet when the discovery was made, had transformed into something else. Not silence, but peace. The peace that comes when secrets are released, when truth is honored, and when family is allowed to be whole.